Everyone thought I, David, was living the ultimate dream. 2 years ago, I was publicly forced out of the technology company I co-founded, Apex Corp, by my arrogant partner, Marcus. Marcus and the media spun the story that I had simply achieved so much success that I chose early retirement. They said I was pursuing philanthropic passions, playing golf, and enjoying a life of pure bliss. My life became the envy of the entire industry. What they didn't know was the painstaking effort it took to hide the massive cracks in that picture-perfect facade. Marcus hadn't bought me out. He had sabotaged me, leaving me personally liable for millions in hidden corporate debt. I was in reality nearly bankrupt, terrified of losing my house, and living on the thin edge of financial ruin. I meticulously curated an image of effortless joy. I attended charity events, wore immaculate clothes, and maintained a flawless, relaxed smile. But my real life was in my dark, cramped basement, silently navigating a very different reality fueled by a desperate need for revenge. My daily routine was a masterclass in deception. I would wake up, put on a perfectly tailored suit, and spend 2 hours in my backyard, ostensibly tending to my garden, just in case a neighbor or a journalist drove by. I would take the time to answer any public phone calls with a slow, relaxed tone, mentioning my plans for the afternoon, which always involved leisure. My neighbors often stopped me to comment on my blissful, carefree existence. "David, you're the luckiest man alive. You look so relaxed," they would say. Every compliment felt like a knife twisting in the huge, painful secret I carried. My daughter, Alice, was the only one who knew a portion of the truth. She knew the debt was real, but she believed my effort was simply to stay afloat. She didn't know the full extent of my plan for revenge, or the existence of Project Shadow, the new technology company I was secretly building in my garage. The hidden reality dated back to the day Marcus stole the company. He had manipulated the books and leveraged my personal assets against a massive, aggressive loan just weeks before he forced the board to vote me out. He claimed I was incompetent. He was the one who was a thief. I was left holding the empty bag, but I refused to expose the fraud immediately. My goal was not to win a legal battle. It was to win the war. I knew Marcus was greedy, arrogant, and impatient. I knew he would run Apex Corp into the ground eventually. My plan was to let him have the public victory, let him enjoy the title, and let him finance his own spectacular collapse. My workspace was in a reinforced, soundproof garage, my new corporate headquarters. It was dimly lit, cramped, and smelled faintly of oil and cold metal. While the industry believed I was on the golf course, I was sitting in that garage, working 18 hours a day to build Project Shadow, a superior, faster, and more elegant software platform that would compete directly with Apex Corp's core product. The effort was painstaking. I funded Project Shadow using my last remaining personal investments, often skipping meals and canceling all external services to save cash. I became my own janitor, accountant, and security guard. I worked entirely alone, paranoid that Marcus had spies or was monitoring my communications. The whole endeavor had to remain completely off the grid and untraceable. I had to be constantly vigilant about my public facade. I would sneak out late at night to buy crucial equipment, paying in cash and driving 50 miles away to obscure computer shops. I developed a detailed cover story for Alice if anyone ever asked about my strange hours or the faint glow coming from the garage window late at night. The mental contrast was the hardest part. One moment, I was fielding calls from a journalist describing my relaxing new hobby of woodworking. The next, I was deep into complex coding, fighting severe eye strain, and racing against the threat of personal bankruptcy. My first 6 months in retirement were a blur of public smiles and private terror. I perfected Project Shadow's core architecture. The technology one was building in my garage was revolutionary. It was a vision Marcus had killed at Apex Corporation. I knew that when the time came, this technology would not just win. It would utterly dominate the market segment Marcus thought he controlled. Meanwhile, I quietly tracked the performance of Apex Corporation. The company, fueled by Marcus's arrogance and constant short-sighted decisions, was already starting to show structural cracks. Marcus was cutting necessary research funding, replacing talented engineers with his unqualified friends, and boasting in the press about how he was streamlining my original creation. Every boast was a sign that he was accelerating his own doom. Alice, my loyal daughter, helped me maintain the facade with the family. She would casually mention my long golf trips or philanthropic meetings when talking to her friends, helping to solidify the image I desperately needed the industry to believe. The pressure mounted when a major debt payment on one of the leveraged loans came due. I was $20,000 short. I had to sell off the last remaining piece of expensive jewelry I owned, a watch Arthur had given me for our anniversary. I drove to a pawn shop several towns away, disguising myself with large sunglasses and an old hat. The transaction was fast and deeply humiliating. I realized that my pristine reputation in the industry was saving me from total ruin. If the bank knew I was pawning jewelry to make payments, they would have seized my house immediately. The perfect facade was the last line of defense against the financial wolves. I made the payment just in time. I returned to my garage, feeling renewed anger and determination. I was tired of fighting just to survive. It was time to switch my focus from survival to the final act of revenge. Over the next few months, the cracks at Apex Corp became public fissures. Their stock started to drop slightly, and their clients began complaining about slow service. Marcus, true to form, dismissed the problems as growing pains and blamed my over-engineered system. He fired the chief engineer who tried to warn him about a critical architecture flaw that I had intentionally left subtle but essential in the original design. I smiled, reading the internal reports Alice secretly sent me. She still had friends working there. Marcus was driving the ship right toward the iceberg, convinced he was the world's best captain. My work on Project Shadow entered its final phase, deployment readiness. I began quietly reaching out to a few trusted investors, people Marcus had alienated or dismissed, presenting Project Shadow not as a startup, but as a superior, stable, ready-to-launch competitor. I didn't hide the truth from them. I revealed the entire plan. The betrayal, the debt, and the strategic failure I was waiting for. The investors were thrilled. They saw the clarity of my plan and the genius of the strategic countermove. They understood that the collapse of Apex Corp would create a massive vacuum in the market, a vacuum Project Shadow was perfectly designed to fill. I secured substantial, immediate funding, contingent upon the public collapse of Apex Corporation. The clock was ticking toward the final, decisive moment. Marcus, meanwhile, was getting desperate. He started calling me, ostensibly to discuss old times. "David, old friend, how's the retirement?" he asked, his voice strained. "Lots of golf." "Oh, it's marvelous, Marcus," I replied, maintaining the relaxed, carefree tone. "Lots of time for reflection. The house is spotless. How's Apex?" I read about the dip. "Just market noise, David. We're great. Just great," he lied, scrambling to end the call. He thought he was checking up on a loser. He was actually speaking to a man who was about to dismantle his entire career. The final deadline approached. Apex Corp was facing a critical contract renewal, the Omega deal, and their system was failing daily. The industry was whispering that Marcus was incompetent, but they still believed I was retired and out of the game. The day the Omega client issued their formal warning to Apex, I knew the end was near. Marcus had 7 days to fix the problem I had spent years learning how to build and understand. I sat in my quiet garage, reviewing the code for Project Shadow. My product was ready. I was ready. The painful image of my perfect retirement was about to pay off in the sweetest form of revenge. I decided the moment of public revelation had to be timed perfectly, 1 hour after Apex Corp announced its bankruptcy. The contrast had to be absolute. Marcus called me again on day 3 of the Omega deal countdown. His arrogance was completely gone. His voice was hoarse and thin, filled with genuine panic. "David, you have to help me," he pleaded. "Whatever you did to the code before you left, it's breaking. The Omega deal is on the line. You know how to fix it. I'll pay you anything." I leaned back in my chair in the dimly lit garage, looking at the complex, elegant code of Project Shadow on my screen. I put on my best relaxed voice, pretending I was still on the sun porch. Marcus, my friend. I replied gently. I'm retired. I haven't looked at a line of code in years. You told the world I was incompetent and that you won. You own the company, Marcus. You own the problem now. Enjoy your victory. I hung up the phone. It was the last conversation we would ever have as rivals. The next 4 days were chaos at Apex Corporation. Marcus threw money at consultants, begged former employees, and attempted every amateur fix possible. The system, designed to punish incompetence, resisted every attempt. The failure was final. On day 7, the Omega deal was officially canceled. The financial hit was immediate and catastrophic. The company's stock crashed completely. The firm I co-founded was worthless, entirely due to the arrogant incompetence of the man who stole it. 1 hour after Apex Corp issued its final, desperate announcement admitting massive financial ruin, I stepped out of my retirement and onto a massive, temporary stage I had set up in a secret facility across town. I faced a room packed with journalists, industry leaders, and my new investors. The contrast between my polished, composed appearance and the panic that had just swept the industry was shocking. For the last 2 years, I began, my voice clear and firm. The world believed I was enjoying a blissful early retirement. I allowed that illusion to stand. I paused, letting the silence draw out. The truth is, I was betrayed by my partner, Marcus, who secretly leveraged my assets and forced me out, leaving me financially ruined. The picture of my perfect retirement was a lie I meticulously curated to protect my family and maintain strategic anonymity. The room erupted into a frenzy of shouts and camera flashes. The industry had been completely fooled by my facade of leisure. I was not retired, I continued, silencing the crowd. I was fighting for my life, and I was preparing for this exact moment. I allowed Marcus to destroy Apex Corp with his arrogance, because I knew he lacked the integrity and patience to sustain the technology one built. I then gestured to the massive screen behind me. The logo for Project Shadow illuminated the room, sleek, powerful, and utterly new. While Marcus was playing CEO with stolen technology, I was quietly building Project Shadow in my garage. This platform is a successor to Apex's technology. It is better, faster, and unburdened by debt or corruption. It is ready to launch today, filling the exact market vacuum Marcus just created. The shock in the room was palpable. They realized my humiliation wasn't a defeat. It was a devastating strategic move. My investors immediately released their prepared statements, announcing massive funding and strategic partnerships for Project Shadow. The news hit the market like a thunderbolt. The industry immediately understood. The savior of the technology wasn't Marcus. It was the man they thought was playing golf. I fielded questions with calm confidence, never once expressing anger, only clarity. I revealed the full details of Marcus's financial sabotage and my hidden struggle, turning my pain into a powerful, compelling narrative of triumph. I spoke directly to the audience, my voice ringing with conviction. If you've ever been betrayed, kicked out, or doubted, let my story be your blueprint. Comment below and tell me how you fought back against injustice. The personal revenge was total. Marcus was financially ruined, his reputation destroyed, and now he had to watch his market share be devoured instantly by the man he thought he had crushed. He lost the company, the title, and his entire career. My public revelation was my liberation. The weight of the lie, the meticulously curated image of bliss, was finally gone. I was free to be honest, and that honesty resonated deeply. I secured all the former Apex clients who had been burned by Marcus's incompetence. They flocked to Project Shadow, seeking the stability and talent they knew only I could provide. The speed of Project Shadow's success was incredible. We quickly became the market leader. I hired back all the talented engineers Marcus had fired, giving them a stake in the new company. I was running a clean, honest, and wildly successful business built on the foundation of integrity Marcus had lacked. I often thought about Marcus, watching his world burn from the sidelines. He hadn't just lost the company, he had lost his future. He lost everything because he valued greed over the painstaking effort of real creation. My daughter, Alice, was immensely proud. She saw her father not as a victim, but as a brilliant strategist who had used the very tools of betrayal to achieve ultimate justice. I decided to create a video about my journey, detailing the extreme difficulty of maintaining the perfect facade while secretly building the company that would destroy my rival. I wanted others to understand strategic value of silence. If you found this story compelling, and if you believe that long-term strategy beats short-term greed, please consider hitting the subscribe button right now and joining our community. I made sure my content focused not on revenge, but on the principles of resilience and strategic patience. The true victory wasn't financial. It was the reclamation of my professional integrity. The irony was not lost on the industry. The man who was supposedly enjoying a carefree retirement was now running the most innovative company in the sector, while the man who seized power was facing lawsuits and bankruptcy. I finally felt the true meaning of retirement. Not the leisure bought by money, but the freedom bought by strategic competence. I was free from Marcus, free from the debt, and free from the suffocating lie. I moved my headquarters out of cramped, dark garage and into a sleek, modern office building. But I kept the old, battered chair from the garage in the corner of my new office as a permanent reminder of the painstaking effort required to turn rock bottom into victory. My image was no longer curated. It was real. I smiled in photos, but the smile was genuine. I was finally relaxed, not because I was pretending to be, but because the war was won. I realized the entire ordeal taught me a valuable lesson. When someone tries to deceive you, let them believe they succeeded. Let them believe they have the advantage. Because while they are celebrating their false victory, you are quietly building the ultimate counterweapon. The shocking contrast between what the world saw and what was truly happening became the core of my public success and my personal peace. I called Alice and thanked her. "You helped me protect the image, sweetheart," I told her. "But more importantly, you helped me keep my sanity." She laughed. "I always knew your woodworking hobby was too intense, Dad. I'm just glad you can finally relax for real now." I went back to the old garage and spent an afternoon dismantling the secret lab. The silence was profound, but this time it was a silence of peace, not the silence of fear. I packed up all the tools, the computers, and the wires that made up the core of Project Shadow's beginning. I used my new influence to lobby for stricter corporate oversight, ensuring that partners and founders had better protections against the kind of malicious financial sabotage Marcus had executed. I didn't want anyone else to endure the crushing private pain I had experienced. I never spoke to Marcus again. His ruin was his own making, fueled by his own greed and arrogance. He never understood the technology, the people, or the long game. I learned that the most effective form of revenge is not personal attack, but complete and total systemic replacement, executed with superior quality. I now lead Project Shadow, focused on innovation and integrity. The company culture is the opposite of the toxic environment Marcus fostered at Apex. I reward talent, value honesty, and encourage transparency. The core lesson of the betrayal became the foundation of the new company's ethical guidelines. The industry now sees me not just as a successful CEO, but as a symbol of integrity. The story of my blissful retirement that became a legend, a cautionary tale about underestimating a quiet opponent. I often reflect on the day I made the decision to allow the public humiliation. It was the hardest choice, but it created the perfect, irreversible trap for my rival. I finally got around to playing golf. I wasn't great, but I enjoyed the leisure. I realized that the true joy in retirement isn't necessarily having unlimited time. It's having the freedom to choose how you spend it, without fear of financial ruin or a rival's deceit. My home was finally secure, my reputation was redeemed, and my future was completely stable. I had navigated the crisis, not just surviving it, but turning it into my greatest professional advantage. The blueprint for turning rock bottom into ultimate victory, as the hook suggested, was simple. Work hard in the shadows and your rival works in the spotlight. The contrast that defined my life for 2 years, the smiling retiree versus the exhausted coder, was now a source of deep satisfaction. It proved that effort, even hidden effort, always prevails over arrogance and false success. I look back at the old picture of the house, the one from the day Marcus kicked me out. The cracks and facade were gone, replaced by the solid foundation of Project Shadow. I was no longer fighting for the house. I was fighting for the principles Marcus tried to destroy. The final, unexpected twist wasn't that I bought back the company, but that I built a completely new, superior one right under my rival's nose while he was busy celebrating the spoils of his theft. I finished recording my final motivational video for the series. I looked into the camera, ready to end the segment. I addressed the viewers directly, my voice filled with the experience of my 2-year war. My biggest advice? Let them think they won. Let them think you're blissfully retired. Because while they're celebrating, you are quietly building the weapon that will dismantle their entire world. That is the only victory that truly lasts. If you found this story compelling, and if you believe that long-term strategy beats short-term arrogance, please consider hitting the subscribe button right now and joining our community. I smiled, a real smile. The long game was won.